of what our religion allows or doesn't allow, or what our religion encourages or doesn't encourage. And that is the topic of boycotting. Now, obviously, when you say this word, depending in what part of the world you are in, this has different implications, right? So if you're talking about boycotting as in the normalization that has taken place between Israel and multiple Muslim countries, then obviously that's something that we have an obligation, those of us that have the ability to do so from afar, to speak up against that. And we hope that the public pressure, inshallah ta'ala, will actually serve as a means of rolling back what are essentially arms deals that have been validated in the name of Ibrahim alayhi salam under the title of the Abraham Accords, and have led to the further erasure of the Palestinian people. But if you talk about boycotting on a very personal level, what it means for us as Muslims, especially with the laws that are becoming more and more restrictive and in an increasing surveillance state, threatening us, even in our personal capacity, in our personal freedom, to boycott products that go to serve the harm that we see being perpetrated against our brothers and sisters on a daily basis. So I wanted to talk about this from an Islamic perspective and situate it within the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, we can look at it with a renewed personal lens. And the first thing that I'm going to say is that in our religion we have a principle that al-aslu fil ashya al-ibaha, that when it comes to all things, anything is permissible unless there is evidence to deem it prohibited, with the exception of what? Acts of worship. Acts of worship need to be proven to be rooted before you are allowed to act upon them. Whereas when it comes to anything outside of the realm of worship, it is neutral unless there's something that makes it prohibited or praiseworthy. So when you look at any political strategy or you look at any action that we have before us, you're not going to be asking the question about whether or not it's prohibited on the basis of trying to prove that the Prophet ﷺ did it. You're going to be looking at the implications of that action, and if there are obvious or ambiguous things that come with it that could potentially be in violation of the religion, or if there are elements of it that go to serve a noble and a lofty goal, hence, if practiced with the right intention, could actually be rewardable. So this certainly falls within that category of something that you don't have to prove to be from the Sunnah, but you're going to analyze at the strategic level and at the level of its spirit and its practice to see how we can make it both useful and faithful, bidnillahi ta'ala. The next thing that I'd say here, which is really important, is that sometimes things are not to emanate simply from the reading of a text, but there is the courage, the sincerity, the natural sense of honor that Allah puts inside of you, that sense of dignity for your brothers and sisters that should cause you to naturally feel an aversion to certain things or feel an affinity to certain things on that basis. And so I want you to, for example, imagine if you were living in Mecca and you were a Muslim and the Prophet ﷺ had made his way to Medina already, and you were a secret Muslim in Mecca, or you were a Muslim who for whatever reason had protection, would you still do business with Abu Jahl? Would you still do business at that time with Abu Sufyan? Would you still do business with the same people that were harming the Prophet ﷺ if you had a choice? Would you really treat Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib and Abu Lahab the same exact way? If you were a Muslim that was living in Mecca and the Prophet ﷺ had already settled in Medina, and you knew that you would be potentially enabling a type of harm, or that even in spirit, engaging in a friendly type of transaction with someone who is directly implicated in the harming of the Muslim community. And I think that we all know that the answer is absolutely not. That without an order coming from the Prophet ﷺ to the Muslims in Mecca, that do not deal with these people and do not deal with these people, we would know inside of us that something feels wrong about this. That going to the marketplace and dealing with the most aggressive enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, as if it's neutral, something feels off about this without having to hear a single hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Because that's an Islamic sensibility, even if it's not a scriptural command. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts inside of us.